Hello everyone. In previous video, we showed how to use input function in Python's Jupyter Notebook to read in keyboard content. And the Jupyter Notebook is part of the Anaconda installation that we did last week. Some of you may ask, why not we use the input function in Databricks Python Notebook? The answer is input function is not supported by Databricks Python Notebook yet. And our textbook are using input function as a way to illustrate how to interact with the program. However, we have an alternative in Databricks Community Edition, Python's notebook. Instead of using the input function, we can actually create a text input widget, and it will be very similar as the input function. So if you cannot install Anaconda into your textbook, into your computer, then you can actually use a text input widget as an alternative to the input function, such that you can use Databricks Python notebook to finish the homework and the project. In this video, I'm going to walk through the details of how to create a text input widget and how to read in the keyboard content to a variable through the widget that we're going to create. So for text input widget, we can create a text input widget through this function here. And this is basically utility function widgets text. There are three parameters for this function. The name of the widget, because you can create multiple widgets, so we have to have a unique name for each widget. And the default value for the widget when you created that. Then, because I'm creating a text input box, so the default value that is going to show in the text box will be none. And the label of the text widget. So the name of the text widget basically is the internal variables that you can use to create, modify, and delete and get information from the widget. The label basically is helped you to distinguish which widget is which. So for example, by run this cell, I'm going to create a text input widget with the name widget underscore 01 with default value none, and the label or the name or how I see this text widget is the input text box. Now let's run it, then you can see what I really mean. After running this cell, you can see there is a text input. This text input, the label for this text input is input text box, textbook. So this one is basically a name. You can put anything. So I just, for illustration purpose, I use input textbook as an example. And the default value is none. The none is show up in the textbook. And actually, this widget, this text input widget has a name. The internal name is widget01. You can actually read in through this text box by referring the name widget underscore 01. Once the text input is created, a text input box will show up here. Now we can enter any string into the text box through our keyboard. For example, I'm going to enter 45. So this is basically a step. You have to use your mouse to click and enter any text you want through your keyboard. After entering content into the text box above, we can use the get method described below to read in the text input and save it to a variable that stores the input value. And in this case, we are actually read the content, which is 45. It's a string, by the way, because we are using the get method for widget name widget underscore 01. So you call this function, and it's going to read. It's going to first find where is the widget 01. The widget underscore 01 is right here, and I entered 45. So this function is going to read in what I entered into the text box and save it to a variable x1. So now let's run this cell. After the cell is run, now x1 will have the value of 45. But remember, it is a string, not a numerical number, because anything you enter into the text box, it will be saved as a string. As x1 is the string of 45, I can actually print it out. Now let's run this cell. I just enter this value, 45, so it is a string. And we can also convert x1 into an integer by using the int function in add 23 and make it x2. Now let's see what is x2. So x2 is 48 as expected, 23 plus 45. Alright, this is basically how you actually create a input text box, and using the text box to enter anything you want and save that save the content into a variable, and you can use that variable for your later Python code. So basically it is exactly the same function as input in Jupyter Notebook, and if you cannot install Anaconda into your computer, you can use this text input widget. It has exactly the same function. After you are all done with your code, you can actually remove this widget. Now it is right here, and after running, you do not want to show any input text box. You can actually remove this widget underscore 01 text input widget using the remove function here. Now let's see what will happen if we run this cell. Alright, you can see the the text input box is gone. Okay, this is the introduction of how to use input widget to realize the same function as the input function in Jupyter Notebook after you install Anaconda into your computer. But now you have an alternative. If you cannot install Anaconda into your computer, you can still finish your homework, assignment, and project using Databricks Community Edition through the input text box widget.